All right. I think we're live. This is David Herbst with Americans for Prosperity Montana. I'm the state director here. We are Montana's largest grassroots community of activists here trying to transform government, limit government so that we have individual rights, free markets, and all the good things that come with those things. So we have with us today Congressman Matt Rosendale. Congressman Rosendale has been working with AFP since he was a state legislator, going all the way back to, I think, 2013 was maybe our first
11,
session working
11
together.
was my first session.
11, and then 13 with AFP being involved, and then, of course, served as our state auditor, where I got to know him and we got to work with each other on healthcare policy reform. And now he is Montana's at-large congressman. He represents the whole state of Montana as a representative to the U.S. Congress. So Rosendale has been a policy champion for us on free market healthcare reform and fiscal responsibility, and we are really excited. Thanks for coming on and joining us today, Congressman Rosendale.
Thank you so much for having me on, David. I really appreciate being on here. The grassroots folks that AFP supports and the work that you guys do is really tough to match. It's critically important, especially in these times. We've got some difficult times where we're working as the minority, and it's difficult to try and push through those same free market principles that we're always discussing. And so I'm hoping to invigorate some of your supporters and believers and get this thing back on the right track again.
Absolutely. And so let's just get started. So with by my calculation, just so you can looking at usdebtclock.org, we're at almost $7 trillion spending this year, federal spending. And with, I think, 4 trillion more being proposed and debated across a multitude of bills right now on the federal level. As the new guy in Congress, been on the ground, on the job for 5 months, what's your take on all this spending?
It's scary, I will tell you. I've been talking about spending for 40 years, David. I'm not new to this whole concept. I was a big fan of Senator Phil Gramm down in Texas when he brought Gramm-Rudman Act out and tried to rein in spending. And back then, the national debt was $1.7 trillion. And we look at that as if it was the good old days. We're approaching $30 trillion rapidly. And as you stated very, very succinctly, they're proposing trillions of dollars each month now, and it's disturbing. And we know, just based upon basic economics, that eventually we're going to hit the wall and we're going to have to start using inflation to bring some of that debt down. It seems to me that the economic indicators are strong enough to show that there's pent-up demand in the marketplace, that if we would just get out of the way, and go back to regulatory reform, go back to tax reform, and allow those policies to take place, we wouldn't have to use this artificial stimulus of pumping money into the economy that we used to say our grandchildren were going to have to pay back. But now we're talking so many generations that I'm not sure how many generations it would take to pay it back.
And this is, of course, paired with the other worst thing that comes out of DC, tax increases.
Exactly.
So we're looking at corporate income taxes, new taxes being created, and capital gains tax increases. Could you dive into some of that and what that might mean for Montana?
It would be very problematic, because when they start talking about corporate tax increases, so they go from the 21 to 28%, it's always the favorite thing of the Democrats to do is to demonize the big corporate rich guy, going to stick it to the man. The problem is that if you look across the state and look at all the small businesses, including our ranchers and farmers, they've all set up corporations. They keep those entities in these corporate structures so that they can more easily have their children involved in the organizations and pass it down to them, because we still have this terrible inheritance tax problem, death tax problem. And so all of a sudden that increase isn't just going against Coca-Cola or Delta Airlines, our friends from down in Georgia, which is another story, but it also would be going against every one of our local farmers and ranchers as well. And they want to get rid of the jobs, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And one of the provisions in there, David, that I think people need to think about is the additional investment that was created because they started allowing more major investments to be expensed out over a given year to take the tax break on it instead of depreciating it out over an 8 or 10 year period. And so that spurred a whole bunch more of investment that helps manufacturing, that helps our businesses, and people lose sight of that as well.
So for your average Montanan who's just a day laborer, what do these sorts of increases on capital gains and business equipment, business taxes mean for them?
So what it boils down to is their day-to-day cost of living is going to go up. They may not own a corporation. So let's just say I'm a guy who works for the facility up the road, whether it's the local brewery or a restaurant or even one of our local manufacturers or the lumber company. And what happens is my cost of living is going to go up. We're already starting to see it as far as the energy costs going up in gasoline. We're going to start seeing it in our electricity. We're going to start seeing it in the food that you consume. All of these products start going up because of the additional taxes and the regulatory burden that the federal government continues to impose upon these businesses. They just pass it down. Their bottom line is not going to change that much. They just pass it down to the consumer. And so these are hidden taxes on every consumer across the nation, hitting those who can afford it the least. It's hitting them the hardest.
That's right. So, and I know for especially Bozeman and Missoula, but even if you go to Billings and Helena, you're getting a lot of talk right now about the cost of living, about how hard it is to live in the place where you grew up. A lot of pressure to move to different areas in the state just because in those areas it's just so expensive, not just in housing, but also in gas. And a big part of this is the energy question coming up next. Now, if we have this cost of living problem, if all of our consumption goods get more expensive, but then energy gets more expensive, they have all this stuff there. Rather than just trying to pass the new Green Deal course, they're trying to put this into an infrastructure bill. Tell us a little bit about this infrastructure bill and all the spending going on there.
So we've just started diving into that, and I've always been a big supporter of infrastructure. I do believe that that is one of the things that the federal government should be responsible for, making sure that we can have commerce back and forth across the states. So keep the highways straight, keep the bridges straight. We need to keep the water and sewer system straight. But the problem is what you and I call infrastructure is not the definition they're using up here in this crazy town. So where we could, if you stretch it out and include broadband, water systems, sewer systems, roads and bridges, and airports and waterways, okay, really sticks and bricks infrastructure to allow commerce to take place. At the most, it's been estimated to be 25% of the legislation that they're considering, meaning 75% is going to go to all types of social programs, from the arts to museums, to promoting, if you can believe it, racial justice in farming. What that even is, I can't tell you. And they're talking about putting $1 billion towards that. So we have got to make sure that the funding that is being spent is actually on infrastructure. And as you know, this is the problem that we have with much of the legislation that comes out of this city, that they continue to tag people's pet projects, special projects, onto everything that comes through until it's just a great big enormous monstrosity of spending that they think is going to force additional votes in support of. But there are still conservatives like myself that it will cause us to vote against it.
Yeah, I've read someplace that electric vehicle spending is greater than roads and bridges within the system itself. I struggle to conceptualize how that's going to help, especially people at the bottom of the economic ladder, to give a bunch of money for electric vehicles when right now they can't even afford the gasoline to put into their current gas vehicle that they currently own.
They can't, and it's going to get worse. It's exasperating the situation. We have already seen, again, this inflation starting to kick in. The plywood. I talk to builders every day, literally every day. Two of my sons are home builders, and the pricing for sheeting, just for the base plywood on the houses, has gone from about $8 a sheet up to $48 a sheet. Well, do that times about 300 sheets for a home, and all of a sudden you can start seeing really quick. And that's just one item, one product that they're looking at. I went to the university, MSU Billings, 2 weeks ago. They're starting to have problems. They're rebuilding their chemistry and their biology lab, they're starting to have problems with the supply chain in bringing in the products that they need to finish that construction. And everything is increasing. And again, the people at the bottom end of the income chain are the ones that are going to suffer the most, because they're living the farthest out from having access to get closer to the job and to their cities. And so that it drives our cost of living up dramatically.
Not to mention the other concerns with slowdown of jobs happening in the Bakken, everything going on with the Keystone XL, the suspension of building of the Keystone XL over the Canadian border, and what that might mean, especially for eastern Montana.
Well, it's not just the closing of Keystone XL, David. Let me tell you, I'm serving on the Natural Resources Committee right now, and the Biden administration has stopped leasing on federal public lands for the last 2 quarters in a row. No leases for oil and gas development whatsoever. And again, now we're starting to see the cost of these oil and gas products starting to creep up. And we are putting ourselves not only in a place where the cost of living is starting to increase dramatically, but also we're starting to compromise our national security. We had gotten to a place where we were energy dominant, not just energy independent. We were energy dominant. And when we can begin to export energy products to different parts of Europe so that they're not dependent on bad actors like the Middle East or Russia, then that is a good thing. And all of a sudden we're stripping away, because of just arbitrary political decisions, stripping away the ability for the United States to develop those energy products.
Absolutely. And what that means for the average guy just trying to get to work every day, just trying to drive from his house to where he is employed. So, and I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't signed up on americansforprosperity.org and joined our grassroots communities, please do so. Like and follow this page. Check out our many state pages, Americans for Prosperity-Montana, if you want to see what we're doing on our state level policy and our community building here in Montana. We have grassroots communities all over our state that you can get involved with, that you can help good ideas rise to the top, and we can stop a lot of these bad ideas, whether it's a federal, state, or local level. That's what Americans for Prosperity is here to do. And lastly, if you haven't checked it out, stopthespendingspree.com. Go there, send a message, and make sure that our congressmen know that you don't want to see all this spending. 25% of all dollars that have ever been created in the United States were created in the last 12 months. Now imagine that. Now what that could put to do on prices and what that means for people at the bottom and what they can do. Now, people look at those numbers and they're seeing all these, these big problems, Congressman Rosendale, and they're like, what can I do to make a difference?
Participate. I will tell you, you talk about the numbers. So I did some quick math on the first $2 trillion package that the Biden administration pushed through. And that was supposed to be for COVID relief. And as we very well know, a very small fraction of that was actually used for COVID relief. We had $1 trillion that was still available right here for spending, for the PPP program, for $59 billion that was available for education, $10 billion that was available for child care facilities. I mean, there was a lot of money still sitting in the bank. They pushed $2 trillion out the door and declared it as COVID relief. Let me tell you just how much that is. It costs just over $5 billion a year to run the state of Montana. Okay. And that includes hospitals, that includes prison facilities, that includes the highways, everything. Educate, medicate, incarcerate, the 3 biggies, right? It covers everything. You could stop tax collections in the state of Montana. And I mean we don't have a sales tax. So income tax, property tax, beer and wine and cigarette tax, all your you could stop every form of taxation in the state of Montana whatsoever and live tax-free on $2 trillion, the whole state could still function for 380 years. That's how much $2 trillion is.
Wow. That's incredible.
And that's the kind of spending they've been pushing out. So we do need everyone to reach out, not just to me, because I'm a believer. I understand. We need to put some pressure on those 12 Democrats that are coming from districts that Republican President Trump won, and apply pressure there. That's where we really need to apply the pressure and send letters and reach out to them as well.
And the great thing about our iVolunteer platform is wherever you're at, it will pick it up and it will say, hey, send it out to your congressional delegations, your representative, your senators, so that people know exactly where you're at. And, and let me just ask you, as a congressman, do you pay attention to the emails you get? And does it matter? Like when people send you messages, do you look at them and do you care?
Now I'm a unicorn, okay, but there's notes right there from people that have been calling my office, and I follow up and I make calls back to make sure that they're actually getting their questions answered and that everything was handled properly by my staff. So I don't know that everybody does that, but I certainly do.
Well, we really appreciate that. And we know that, all of our successes have come from when people make their voices heard. Whenever we engage in an issue, the more that people can passionately get involved and take that brave step to, it only takes 30 seconds to get on, go to stopthesprintingspree.com, send a message and get engaged. And then if you want to take a step further than that, go to a local rally, go to a local community event, and start networking with other believers, people who really care about the future of this country and whether or not this debt is going to bankrupt us, because a bankrupt country is good for nobody.
Hey,
right?
look, you can make as much money as you want to, David, but if someone else is telling you how to spend it, it's not good. It's not good. And that's where we are heading down right now.
Absolutely. Well, so thank you so much for giving us this policy deep dive and for your time. I know you're busy out there in DC fighting for the rest of us, and really appreciate it, Congressman Rosendale.
It's always great participating with you. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day.